When I opened my first gallery after working for a number of galleries on both coasts in 1967, I showed a lot of the New York people. And what would happen would be these people, the collectors, the bi-coastal collectors would come in. They say, oh, this is fabulous, this is wonderful. And then they come to New York to buy because they wanted entree into the top galleries. And mine was a new, like a newfound gallery. One time I had a show of Victor Vasarely, egg tempers. No one had ever seen his work in the United States. And the man across the street who had a very fine gallery, Felix Landau, came in and said to the handlers, he came to the opening. I said, oh, it's such an honor to have you. He came to the opening and then he said to the handlers from Paris, get this stuff over to my gallery. This girl hasn't had any experience. The next day the trucks came and took the art away. So I always waited and waited, and then later I got even. He was on my radio show, and someone that he owed money to was driving by and heard the show just in a studio like this and raced in and said, you owe me $30,000. And I thought, oh, good. God took care of what I couldn't do myself.
So, Molly, what interests you about art in particular? Why do you love art?
Well, I think art is a human endeavor to make something out of the chaos that we live in and to rectify it by continually doing the same thing so people recognize that it's your art. I became interested when I first saw Jackson Pollock, an article about him in Life magazine, and they called him Jack the Dripper. Is this man really an artist? And here was this man throwing paint on the floor, on a canvas that was stretched on the floor of his studio. And I just loved the beautiful colors. And I thought, this is probably crazy, but this is something I really want to get into. I think that's one of the things art does, is it gets your inner voice. Like if you're writing or painting, you work and work and work, and all of a sudden your inner voice, the thing you're trying to say, comes out, and you say, oh, that's what my art is about. It takes a while.
So you have to be a little bit of a bold character.
Exactly. You must be a definitely bold character and believe in yourself and your own personal taste. I never thought of that. It's absolutely true.
Well, you're known for discovering artists, and you're known for recognizing talent.
I think so.
What are the key kind of elements in your discovery of people?
I think that what you do when you're starting to look for art in a certain period of art history, you go to the people who are painting that way and see who's your favorite. And there'd be a system of agreements. And when I was looking for people in the abstract expressionist movement, after I got to know de Kooning slightly and then better later, but I would say to people, who are your favorite artists? And they'd always say de Kooning. They'd say themselves first, but then they'd give you 4 or 5 other names. And that's one way to look at it. When you're discovering someone who no one knows about, there's sort of an instinctual thing. I think it's a non-linear approach to life, which is sort of a circular approach, where you'll be thinking and all of a sudden something will pop into your head, or you'll see an artist and you'll start talking and you'll say, this man or woman is really talking about truth in life, but using art as a vehicle.
What stylistically differentiates the LA versus the New York art scene?
Good question. On the West Coast, there's a lot more space, so work is larger. And also there isn't the emphasis on the history of art that we get from Europe here. Asia may be an influence, but mostly it's more of a cowboy style, a laid-back style. So the Getty Museum tried to instigate a show of all the artists that had come out of Los Angeles since the 70s. And they did it maybe a couple months ago. And it didn't work. They got all the galleries to put all their old-time artists in, but it didn't work. It was too soon. Another thing I see that's very important in Los Angeles, because I just came from the art fair yesterday, is writing about art or words in art. For example, John Baldessari uses a lot of words. Ed Ruscha, who was he was our representative at the Biennale this year, he uses a lot of words like ouch or standard station in his work. And somehow there's an emotional feeling you get with the color he uses, plus the words. I haven't been around too much this week to see any of the museum shows or anything, but I know that that's one of the things that are happening. People are trying to define art by using words or using slogans or using things about our political scene or about from slavery to the President of the United States. All of this I see in subtle word paintings.
The mind of someone who finds themselves surrounded by artists, wanting to discover art, wanting to be around art, wanting to collect art. let's dive into a little bit of the mind of the collector.
I sort of broke this down years ago. People in their 20s don't want to buy art. They're young, they're having fun, and they hang around with artists. They think, oh, these people will always be available. Like when I lived next door to Joan Mitchell, we went through a hurricane. I thought, oh, I'll always be able to get her stuff. Then when I finally had some money to collect, it was so over my, I couldn't possibly get into the $300,000 stuff. But anyway, in their 20s, people are just interested in art for the beauty of it. People in their 30s often have a partner, they have a house, they have a job, and they want something that's going to reflect well on them. So they start collecting. They usually buy one or two oil on canvas or things that are they're not under glass to put in their living room, that people will come to their house and it reflects well on them. People in their 30s and 40s are looking for something to do, often a hobby. And it's fun to go to art galleries in New York or LA or any place on Saturdays, or to the gallery nights that most big cities have, and really get around. And then people in their 50s often want their names on museums, so they collect one kind of art so that they can turn their collection of abstract art or portraits or puns on nature into a collection to donate to a museum. And I think what happens with us when we get locked into one period of art history, that's still our favorite. We'll go into other periods of art history. I went into pop art, op art, all different kinds of...
Did you say op art?
Op art. Op art was a movement started by Bridget Riley in London, and it makes your eye vibrate. It's strictly set up. It would be almost like the rubber that we have on these walls. You look at it and it sort of vibrates.
I'm John Knowles, here with Molly Barnes. We're in the window of RS Pop Plus at the Roger Smith Hotel, and we're going to talk about art. We're going to try and discover a little bit about Molly and her passion for art.